Between 1943 to 1954, United States Marine Lieutenant Colonel John P. Kelley flew the F-4U Corsair over 1,800 hours in 2 wars. Among other achievements, he was decorated with 4 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 2 Presidential Citations, and 1 Navy Unit Commendation. This is his Corsair story.
Some of the fellows that had come back from Guadalcanal were our instructors here, and we checked out, and the best fighter plane of World War II, the Chancellor Corsair. Now, the Corsair was more difficult to fly than the old Wildcat, far more dangerous, but it was the best performing fighter that ever had come along, and it was worth taking the chance on, because when you went into combat, you'd have things on your side. 1 out of 6 guys who tried to fly this got killed, and there was a big stink in the country about it. But once you learned how to fly it, it was a marvelous airplane. Now, this is a model of the F-4U-1, which was really quite an airplane. It was very dangerous to learn how to fly. You see, there's just one cockpit and 1 seat in it, and it had a great big R-2800 engine up here in the front, and it had a 3-bladed propeller. That R-2800 engine turned up about 2,200 horsepower. And that was, at that time, very, very powerful. Most of the, like the Wildcat, had 1,400 horsepower. It had an awful lot of torque, so that on takeoff, or any time you give full power on it, the airplane had a tendency, the propeller, you see, turned in this direction, and the airplane had a tendency then to turn in the opposite direction. The way this airplane was designed, it was designed in an inverted gull wing here, which made it look very sinister, but there was a very practical reason for doing that. They wanted the landing gear to retract under the wings, but they couldn't. The gear had to be so long because this propeller had a diameter of 13 feet. And the wings, you see the propeller almost hits the ground. So instead of making the landing gear struts longer, they took and bowed the wings down so the landing gear struts could be shorter and yet still fit under the wing when they were retracted. They put out a call here at the Fighter Training Unit at El Toro. They needed volunteer replacement pilots for the South Pacific. We were losing an awful lot of Marine pilots out there. And me and about 4 of my friends decided we were going to be those replacements. And we left here at the end of '43 and went out to the South Pacific. We replacement pilots flew every day at a Fadi off of a coral strip, and to get ready to go into replacing pilots who were shot down in the active squadrons. Well, I was assigned then to VMF 216, Marine Fighter Squadron 216. And they had just come back from a tour in Bougainville, and they had downed about 40 Jap planes with the Corsair. So I went into a very seasoned outfit. And every day you'd fly combat air patrol. Now, combat air patrol was when you put 2 or 4 airplanes up flying around under radar control to intercept any enemy aircraft coming in. Along with the airborne Corsairs on combat air patrol, you'd have ground alert. And you'd have 4 Corsairs on the end of the runway, right beside the end of the runway, with the pilots sitting in them. And if you'd see a flare go off from the little improvised tower, that meant you'd start up your airplane and off you'd go to try to intercept whatever was coming in. We were going to make our second tour on the carriers. And we all qualified. Well, a couple of them got hurt, but most of us qualified on the old USS Saratoga, which was one of the first large carriers the Navy ever had, a beautiful ship. And we all went out then on the USS Wasp. We went in and made a bombing run on Chichijima, which is in the Bonin Islands, heavily defended islands immediately south of Tokyo, maybe 500 or 600 miles. Lots of AA and so on. And an interesting thing, I had a wingman whose name was Barnum. And we had then had enough time in the Corsair to know that when a lot of anti-aircraft was coming at you, the best thing to do was go fast as you can. Well, we didn't say that. We said shit and get as fast as you can. It's like running through a rainstorm. The less you're exposed to it, the less wet you're going to get. So we'd take the Corsairs and in our dives, bombing or rocket or whatever, we'd try to get as steep as possible. Now, me and Barnum again, we both, he had 500-pound bomb, I had 8 5-inch rockets, and we went down on a troop ship. This was a month before the invasion, and we sunk that fella, and it went down in less than a minute. And even today, it's still sitting on the ground, sitting on the bottom of the ocean, in the harbor at Naha, and the flying bridge is still exposed. And we went down on a second run to check the damage that we had done to it. And here's a guy still up on that flying bridge shooting a 40-millimeter cannon out at us, and his feet are in the water. But that was quite a good show. We prepared the landing site for the Marines' invasion of Iwo Jima. And we additionally flew combat air support patrol over the island, and we did direct air support, close air support, as the waves of our Marines were coming in. Then we hit Tokyo, and that was kind of hairy. In our squadron, on dawn launch, we sent out from our squadron 8 Corsairs to hit Yokosuka, which is the large naval base near Yokohama, right next to Tokyo. And man, that was a beehive. Of those 8 planes we sent out, only 3 came back. And I was leading the 2nd Division, or that's the second 4 airplane group of the 2nd strike from our squadron. And I thought, due to the fact that only 3 out of 8 came back on the first one, I thought that I had bought the farm. With these Corsairs, we were doing a lot better than what our predecessors had done with the Wildcats because of this particular bird. It was so good. We went in and protected the Army 24th Division down at the Pusan perimeter, and we brought with us the 1st Marine Brigade, that's a reinforced regiment, and 2 Corsair squadrons and 2 little teeny carriers, and we kicked butt. We drove them back 35 miles in one day, the North Koreans. We were pulled from that area, and then the 1st Marine Division joined the brigade, and we went around to the west coast of Korea, and on early September,